It's the episode 10 of Museum in Lotus. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we are going back to Japan again, are we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to Japan.
We're going to Japan. You can't go to Japan, but we are going to bring you to Japan. Of course, the antiques, as Mr. Giuseppe De Giosa is an expert in. And these are things that of Master Yin's private collection that he's not selling, but you can come to the gallery to appreciate it, right?
Yes.
Am I right? Yeah. So the previous two episodes of Museum in Lotus, we also went to Japan.
Yes, we went to Japan.
We did talk about this chest here. Do we look a bit short today? We are okay, huh? Yeah, because today we are doing it the Japanese style. We are sort of like really sitting on the floor with this thing. This, our friends should be familiar. Because we talked about it for 2 weeks.
We talked for 2 weeks. This is the Isshu Tansu.
This is the Isu Tansu.
So it's the clothing Tansu, but as I mentioned before, it's made in 2 sections, and then the 2 sections can be separated, and this is what has been done. So it looks totally different.
Yes. So previously what you saw was this is the top piece. It's when I was lifting it, I found that they was crafted ingeniously. The bottom piece in front of Mr. Pino, this is a heavier piece.
Yes.
And the wood is actually tougher. This piece that is on top, see, it's different. It's much softer wood, so it doesn't create the pressure on this piece, and it can be separated. And I was sharing Mr. Pino that because the Japanese, they tend to sit here, so if they break it up into 2 pieces, it can serve as excellent table. And I have this obi here that is sort of like a tablecloth.
It is.
Because today we are going to eat something Japanese as well. In front of me, this Meiji plate. I'm really using all the antiques as much as possible.
But absolutely, and this was possibly meant for sushi. So
I think so. This is probably meant for sushi. So I have here sushi. So we are going back to Japan. So we are going to have some Japanese sushi while we talk about Japan antiques again. Shall we? Cheers first. And,
cheers.
Enjoy some laurent-perrier champagne with sushi. Friends at home, if you already have laurent-perrier champagne, if you already have claimed your Blanc de Blanc champagne, well, you can enjoy this show and cheers with us. Mr. Pino, are you a sushi person?
I am a sushi person. Absolutely, yes. I like it.
Do Italians eat a lot of Japanese food?
I think they're starting to eat, and they're starting to appreciate quite a bit.
Really?
So, and it's very healthy, and therefore it's something that they like. Yes.
There's actually quite the connection between Italy and the Asian culture. Am I right?
Yes.
Because Marco Polo is Italian, right?
Yes.
And Marco Polo being Italian, he went to China when it was Yuan Dynasty.
Yes.
And he brought back a lot of Asian values and cultures, and I think cuisine as well. Because rice is a very Chinese thing.
We have a slightly different rice.
Okay.
But again, when you consider in Europe, not too many people would use rice. And we have our own rice, and we have a variety of rice. And that's the reason why we have the so-called risotto, which is made in different ways. And it's absolutely delicious and vegetarian in most of the case. So easy to eat, easy to digest, and not much different from some fried rice that I've eaten here in Singapore.
Right.
So there is a familiarity, and there is a correspondence, if you wish, between the Italian food and the Asian food, in particular the spaghetti.
Okay.
I mean, again, we say that we were the ones to invent spaghetti, or the similar kind of noodles that you would have in China.
But noodles is a very common thing in the Asian society. It's a very common thing in Chinese, Japanese, and so on.
Yes.
Well, of course, we know that it's a China-centric cultural influence that influenced Japan, that influenced Korea, and so on. So Yuan Dynasty, Marco Polo came. I don't know, I have not researched who came up with that first.
Of course, the Italians say that
Italians
we
would
were
say,
the ones. So this is ours. It does not belong to you. It was Marco Polo who brought this to China and
Really?
to Russia, but this is what
No.
we say. I'm sure you would say no, and it's obvious.
But probably risotto. And Spain's, they have this paella.
Yes,
It's rice-based.
yes,
Maybe really is hugely influenced with the trade and commerce
I'm
and the
sure.
relationship.
I mean, the other evening I went to a Chinese restaurant
Yeah.
with a friend of mine, and again we ordered rice.
Yeah.
It was identical, both Italians, and we say, what is the difference between our own risotto and the one that we're eating tonight? There wasn't any difference, to tell you the truth.
So in the end, we realized that a lot of the boundaries that we have now, if you go back into history, and especially when we look at the antiques, which we are going to do it tonight, then you realize there's a lot of connection.
A lot of connection.
We were-
lot of connection.
Talking about it the week before, because last week we had the winter solstice event, that we know that the Japan during Meiji period, like when this transistor came along, it took a lot of influence from the West. And of course, now that we also mentioned that the Japan is giving back to the world, as in the other societies, they are taking a look at what Japan was doing and then adapting it into their own culture. For instance, I said that, there was a silk screen we talked about, and Masturin's painting is also on silk, and calligraphy as well. So there's a cross of this whole thing. Everyone is learning from each other, upping the game, bettering the skills, making the craft work even better, and so on. Am I right?
And I would say human beings are the same.
Yeah.
And I'm sure with the Silk Route, a lot from Europe came to this part of the world and vice versa.
So, we were talking about, what were we talking about just now? Oh, last week, okay, before we go into the antiques of today, which is still Japan, so we are really doing a Japan series of this season. Last week was the winter solstice.
Fantastic experience on my part, fantastic in all respect.
Have you done something like that before?
I have never done it, and that's the reason why it was really a new experience and a very positive one, in order to introduce to the audience some of the pieces that we had spoken about.
Yes.
But I basically was with Ashley, and Ashley gave her own opinion of feng shui and what it meant. And so that was an eye-opener for me.
She was amazing, huh?
She was very, very good. I thought actually that she was in the industry.
Oh.
So natural, so spontaneous, and it was very easy, basically, to do this with her.
Her and her husband, she and her husband joined the Lotus family in 2020 March, just before we locked down. Just before the nation lockdown. So they've been with us for about 1.5 years. And so they've seen steady improvements in their life and very passionate in helping out here as well. So that day, Ashley and Mr. Pino had the amazing chance. One of the highlights, of course, was the Pillar of Light, where 91 Lotus rings
We're blessed.
were blessed on the tower. So before the blessing happened, you and Ashley talked about it.
Yes.
And when the blessing was happening, actually Masturin used a lot of energy to actually really get it done.
It was a beautiful event, very well presented, and again, the blessing was also about the gold box which contains the incense.
Which is here.
And each one of the incense container was actually blessed. I mean, I was very surprised. I thought it was going to be a blessing of the overall. Instead, each of the boxes were touched. So
each one.
Incredible. Very, very good.
It's very good. Definitely is because of your introduction and Ashley's. Then a lot of people will see a lot of value inside this thing.
She was very spontaneous, very good. And again, I thought she was a professional. I actually asked her.
Huh. She's very professional, actually.
Very, very professional.
Even though she's not in this industry.
Very professional, very smooth. She knew exactly what to say at the right time. Not difficult at all to do the presentation with her.
It's a total life thing. So if you and her make mistakes,
there wasn't any mistake.
I'm sorry. No, you can't take it back.
It all went very, very smooth.
So did you manage to see the blessing when it happened?
Can I tell you, no, I didn't see the blessing,
Yeah.
but I did see the blessing outside with the
Oh,
pillar
okay.
of light, and
Right,
I saw what Master Yoon did. He was the first one to start the light, and
Right.
after that there were 6 people going around
yes.
and making sure that all of the lights were lit. So
The
very,
6
very beautiful.
6 guardians. The 6 of them are also some of my very good clients. So they felt very fortunate because they were the ones who are closest when Master Yin was blessing, and they were the ones when Master Yin was lighting that incense. They were the first to take a whiff in, and they were the first to light the pillar, and so on. And when the whole pillar was lit up, do you see it?
It was fantastic.
Have you seen it before? That the whole pillar was lit?
Never, never.
Really?
Never.
Yeah.
So it was really something.
Yeah.
And again, it was dark, and you could see
Yes.
the lights, and you could also imagine this is what is happening. It's basically giving lights to all of
Yes.
us, warmth to all of us. It comes with a blessing. It comes with this beautiful 91, 92 rings. And I was just imagining the energy that each of the ring gained by this particular blessing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can imagine, so how we make these collections come to life. Sorry. How we make these antiques come to life. So before that, the pillar of light was kept at the other gallery, and it actually has been there for a long time. So a lot of the clients passed by but never noticed it. It's only when we had this program, this session here, that's why it makes, this is a very important program every Tuesday, is when we talked about it, when I invite Mr. Pino to talk about it, there people are, oh, this is so good, I've not seen it before. No, you will just pass by it without realizing that it's there, right? Some of them have sat on the Qing Dynasty chairs before, and they just thought it's a chair,
Yes.
but it's a Qing Dynasty chair, so it's different.
And very comfortable. Tonight I was just sitting on the chair,
Yeah.
and I felt, oh,
Before we sit like a Japanese, yeah.
how beautiful this chair is, and again,
So how we make the history comes to life, if we keep the pillar there, or if we keep the pillar in the warehouse, it would just be a very distant antique. The culture stays there. It doesn't come to us. Now, when we use it and incorporate it, like how we put the rings, your rings on the pillar, it's been re-blessed, so the culture comes to life. And at night, when you see the whole pillar, 7 trays, 91 slots, all lit up, then you can start to imagine about 18th century, right, the pillar was.
the pillar, it's 19th century,
19th
but it
century.
could be the beginning of the 19th century.
Right.
So it could be in between the 2 centuries, end of the 18th and beginning of the 19th.
200 plus years.
Yes.
You can imagine 200 plus years in India, in Kerala, that at night, for sure, they don't have electricity
No.
because it wasn't discovered then.
Yes.
That they use this to light up the entire temple or the household, and that's how it looked at night. How what Mr. Pino was saying, to chase away the darkness and to give light to the whole place. And now we are using antiques, Meiji plate, if you remember, for sushi. Actually, it looks wonderful. You know, I should have ordered more. I should have ordered more to fill the whole plate.
But can I say, by not doing that,
Yeah, I can see
again,
the beauty of it.
all the details of this blue plates comes alive. And
Yeah.
again, the colors that it contains and the colors of the sushi match
Okay.
in many ways. So
You're
I think
right.
it's very artistic.
You're right. You know, I'm going to use this as my sushi plate more often. So we are back to Japan. We are surrounded by all things, most things Japanese, the Meiji plate, the Meiji tanzu, and this obi here. What are we sharing today?
Okay, before we start, I would just like to pass a little comment.
Okay.
I feel very privileged tonight because I feel that we are actually in a museum.
Yes.
And so this is the museum in Lotus. The way everything has been organized, I feel spontaneously, but the setting is absolutely amazing. When I came and I saw it, I was really touched. And what we see here, as we said, it's a Meiji period tansu, and it has its own peculiarities. And we have two things that I'm going to present tonight.
Two things.
Two things. One, in my opinion, is very special.
Ooh.
And this is a vase.
Is it heavy?
And it
seems very heavy.
Very, very heavy. Initially, when I examined this vase, I actually thought, because of the colors, that it was bronze. But I wasn't convinced 100%, because at the bottom, I basically detected some rust, and that created the doubt in me. I would have said, by just looking at it, that this is bronze 100%. But then there is a technique in order to distinguish what is made out of iron with what is made out of bronze. And I've brought along this simple element here, which is...
It's a magnet.
It's a magnet.
It's a magnet.
Correct. It's a magnet. And when the magnet goes onto the iron, it will attach. If I get another metal, it would not attach. So I was convinced that only by seeing this about what this is, and this is iron.
Right.
Now, you just imagine, for the artist, although we don't have a signature, to create something so beautiful, which, in my opinion, beside being an art piece, and that's the way I like to define it, it would also be used as an ikebana vase. And we'll get into the ikebana and a short explanation of the ikebana. Let's go into details about this. Now, it has a circular base.
Right.
And as it increases in size, it goes up, and it ends up in an oval shape. So just look at the beauty. This is oval, and this is circular at the base.
Not sure whether they can see it, that here it's oval, here is circular. So it's not uniform, actually.
It's not uniform. And again, this is the skill of the artist, but also his imagination in designing this piece. Now, what is beautiful, exceptional about this piece, for me, it's the way that the artist has managed to make this beautiful handle. This handle, when you look at it, as I'm looking at the moment, would look like just a simple handle. It's not. This has been forged, and it's actually two pieces which have been forged in such a way that they will only join in the middle. Now, the handles are basically included in this U-shape, again, iron element, which is attached, this element, to one of the rims. Now, I would ask anybody, please come, take a look, show me where the welding is. There's almost inexistent, and that is because the artist did not want to infringe in any way with the purity, cleanness of the lines.
Can I ask some very layman questions?
Yes.
When was this piece from?
Very good. I didn't actually introduce it, but this is a Showa period. The Showa period goes from 1926 to 1989. And if I were to bet, this would be between the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s. This is what I think. It could be even earlier.
So it's post-World War II?
Post-World War II.
Probably
When Japan was starting really to become rich, people started to appreciate the aesthetics, people started to appreciate the art of ikebana, which I will touch later. I'd like to point out at something. This vase here shows a container, okay? And the container is basically shown through this V shape, as we can say, low V shape opening. And the V shape opening would allow to see the difference of the color. Inside, it's brass. On top of that, there's another element here of a different metal. Nothing of this is necessary. but it's all to respond to beauty, simplicity, essence.
While they are trying to create simplicity,
Yes.
it's not simple, as you have
Not
mentioned.
at all.
The U shape, how the subtle thing from round to oval, the two layers of welding
Yes.
of the handle and how the handles match in the center. It's not, I mean, if it's a vase, I could have just have something as simple like this. I can produce 10,000 per day, but
Correct.
this is not.
This is not. Now, let me also tell you, as the vase tapers, we see one round circle, which is flat, okay? And we then see another flat circle, flat again, a sort of a symmetry between the two rings. But when we look at the last rim is basically different, and it rises up,
Right.
and it serves to contain the brass container where water would be placed inside and flowers.
So your take that this antique here, when Japan was most prosperous in the 20th century,
Yes,
it's a vase.
it's a vase. No doubt that this is a vase. And artistic vase, I would also add.
Right.
And it was a period in the 60s, 70s, where Japan was ready to have beautiful objects in their houses, and mostly artistic objects.
Right.
Unfortunately, there's not a signature, but in my modest opinion, this is an artistic piece for all the little characteristics that I've just basically spoken about.
So just for a brief understanding of timelines,
Yes,
we talked about the Meiji period,
yes,
which is 1868 yeah, to 1912.
correct.
Am I right? Yeah.
Absolutely right.
I did my revision, yeah. After that, then there was World War I, then there was World War II,
Yes,
and Japan was down for a couple of years.
Yes.
And Mr. Pino is saying that this vase, this artistic vase, it looks simple, but you can't see where the welding work is. It leaves a lot of subtle details that round, over. It's a very Japanese way of doing things, huh? Yeah.
It's
Subtle.
all about simplicity. But I was told, and I totally agree,
Yeah.
simplicity is the hardest element to obtain.
So,
Things complicated in the spirit of beauty are possible.
Okay.
But the ones that contain simplicity, the essence, allowing people to come up with their own ideas about the piece, that phenomenal, I think.
I see. Back to the timeline, 1960s, if friends are interested to know, or friends who are old enough to know, that 1960s is when Tokyo organized or hosted Olympics.
Yes.
And by then, they already had the fastest traveling train, bullet train in the whole world. It's still one of the fastest today.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it was definitely an age after Meiji period that they took after the World Wars, which was terrible, and then they took back the Meiji's period and they continued in this relatively modern era. Am I right?
Absolutely right.
I want to ask Mr. Pino something. Since we're having Japanese food,
Yes.
what might be a simple dish in Italy?
A simple dish would be pasta.
Pasta, yeah,
A
that's right, yeah.
simple dish of pasta with fresh tomato, and you would possibly have 1 or 2 leaves of basil,
Yeah.
and not even cheese.
Nothing.
As simple as that.
Is there a name for it?
Yes, it would be spaghetti
Yeah,
al pomodoro. Pomodoro would mean tomato.
right.
So
And it's the
very-
simplest, most
It's the
entry.
simplest, and it's absolutely delicious when it's done with the right ingredients. The tomato have to be fresh, they have to be ripe, the right amount of salt. We don't need to have any pepper. It's just the taste and the flavor and the smell of the basil is so good, so simple.
So simple dishes, huh? Simple ingredients.
Simple dishes, simple ingredients.
pasta, I'm sure everyone has eaten before. Anyway, I recently read one news that pasta is actually a very good food for weight loss. Strangely.
Yes.
Yeah.
As long as al dente, which means that it should not be overcooked.
Oh.
So, as you said, and as we are mentioning tonight, about simplicity.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the simplicity of this vase. But anything that is simple,
Yeah.
it's actually, it contains so many complicated aspects.
Right.
But they have to be done to perfection, art.
Correct.
I wouldn't say that a dish of pasta would be art, but if done well.
If done well, somehow they made the spaghetti
Yes.
so refined. The tomatoes are from somewhere the freshest of the entire world.
Yes.
Basil leaf, the freshest. Oh my god, I'm making myself hungry. It's going to be the most wonderful spaghetti.
Al pomodoro. With tomatoes.
With
this
tomatoes.
is what it means.
Spaghetti with it actually means spaghetti with potato. Tomatoes. Yeah,
With tomatoes,
that
correct.
you have ever eaten. It's the same. I think it applies across different cultures. Sophisticated food. Let's say you have. Chinese, we have abalone,
Yes.
or let's say shark fins. Those are high-end food materials.
Yes.
If you go on YouTube and know how to do it a couple of times, because the material is good and it's high-end, so it's easier. But sometimes the easiest thing, they contain a lot of sophistication that you might not realize, but it's what that makes it artistic. Am I right?
And delicious.
And delicious, yeah.
When you eat something, there's such a satisfaction and happiness
Right.
to have eaten something that really is beautiful.
That's a way of saying it in Chinese. I'm not sure whether this same lingua or this same expression exists in
Yes.
the Anglo or the Italian world.
Yes.
When we Asians tend to say, or we Chinese tend to say, that if someone has refined something as simple or as common, but elevates it to such a level, we call this person has 登峰造极. They have reached the peak, and they have attained the maximum, in a sense. And the simpler word for it that I think Japanese also share, like how the Chinese, anyway, they got it from the Chinese. The idea is that this person it's not just a craft anymore, but they are in the Tao, they're in the path of it. So you can make a good tanzi. Young masters, they craft, but skills are very precise. One day super experienced, but one day some of them might realize they have an epiphany, Then they feel that they're in one with this whole thing. And then they're in the Tao, what we call. In Japanese, like if there's the way of the samurai, they call it the Bushido. In Chinese, called 武士道. So when someone has managed to create a vase to this extent, then it's not just a craftsmanship thing. The craftsmanship is definitely wonderful, and they get there first, but they're in the zone, they're in the Tao. Am I right?
I concur with you 100%. And just going back to this vase, I would really suggest anybody who is interested in beautiful Japanese artifacts or pieces of art to come over, to examine. Again, I don't know if you can clearly see, but the patina, which again is bronze, and no scratches, no dent, everything is absolutely perfect.
If I may say, even looks a bit alien. There's no, you must come and see, it looks a bit alien, because there's no place that, even for this tanzi, you can see that, okay, this piece of metal here, is to secure it. We're going to talk about this, this definitely to secure it, and all this I can see where the presence of human touches is.
Yes.
And how it has aged through time.
Yes.
But this piece looks a bit alien-y. Like why did he do this? Why did he morph into this? And there's no opening, there's no closing, there's no opening of the welding, and so on. And you said that it's for this thing that's called ikebana.
It's for ikebana. I've not mentioned about ikebana, but Mr. Khan, ikebana goes back to the 7th century. And the ikebana is an art form.
Yes.
And where did it start? It started by putting flowers in front of the image of Buddha. So an image that was worshipped. And similarly, the kind of presentation of the flower that they wished had to really be the most beautiful that they could actually make. And this has evolved over time. And the evolution of the ikebana has gone step by step with also the evolution of vases. You imagine for a tea ceremony, you wouldn't have something so imposing, so strong. You would have something very delicate because the ritual is delicate with some few flowers. Now, you won't believe it, but in Japan, I was just reading, there are 3,000 ikebana art schools, 3,000.
3,000?
3,000. And when you imagine why 3,000, why so many? Because of the principle behind of how the flower should be placed, what is the philosophy behind, what is the meaning, and what they actually wanted to project.
I see.
This is all in the ikebana. So I hope that soon we will be able to represent this wonderful vase with some flowers to give the audience the idea how this can be presented and serve as an ikebana vase base. And here we have the container, which I will try to extract.
Oh, there's a separate layer.
It's a separate layer, which is the container. It's a little bit stuck, but it definitely comes out.
I see.
And possibly it's the way that it's been placed.
Oh, it's okay. So you can come here. That means that according to what Mr. Pino has shared with us, one day, probably don't know when, so please keep on staying tuned to our program, that we will be able to relive the history of how this vase was used.
Yes.
As ikebana.
Yes.
I see. You know, the coincidental thing that the ikebana actually means the arts of
flower arrangement.
The arts of flower arrangement.
Yes.
In Chinese, it has two words, and it's called Hua Dao. The Dao, the path of flower or the path of flower arrangement.
Right.
So I suppose that in its meaning was, if a person is so well attuned to how the flowers are supposed to be arranged, it is no longer just a craftsmanship method. It's that you have ascended to the path.
Another level.
Another level, in the Tao, the way, you have gotten the way. So this is what we have, the ikebana vase that is from 1960s.
1960s.
Yeah. Okay, that's wonderful. Hopefully we will get to relive the history of how this vase once was gloriously presented, ikebana, to the people back then.
One coincidence here tonight is that this 1960 vase is basically being combined with a 1960 brocade silk obi, which was possibly used for marriages. Now, you just look at the colors. They all match to perfection, just by chance. And sometimes this is the art of arranging things, and they become just very special.
I see.
So I see such a beautiful balance between this vase and this wonderful obi.
I didn't mean for this to happen.
Can I say, but whoever did it did something really beautiful to give even more importance and justice to this amazing vase.
So we are in the zone then.
We are. This is a collector items without any doubt.
Right. Okay. So we see this vase, ikebana vase, from one of the most prosperous times during Japan modern history, and of course, if you notice that why we are sitting down today like Japanese, other than because we are going back to Japan in time as well, we have this mega thing over here.
It's a mega tea chest, tea tansu, cha tansu.
So this is a tanzu. That means that
Isho tansu for
isho
clothing.
Tanzu. Tanzu
Tanzu.
is like chest.
It's chest. It's the general word for chest.
Iso, it is like clothing's.
Clothing.
Okay.
Clothing.
Iso tanzu, and this is cha tanzu.
Cha tansu, and that. Okay. Now let's first say that there are an enormous quantity of different tansu, which would serve different purposes. So we would have one for the kitchen.
Okay.
We would have one as a safe box for the ship.
Precious items.
We would have some of them which would actually have steps and would allow people to go from one floor to the other. And from the front, you would have an enormous amount of little drawers, sliding doors, again, to keep futons or whatever is required. Here, what is amazing about this cha tansu, normally I've seen them in my trips when I used to work for the bank in Japan, but I usually saw small ones, the ones that could possibly be placed on small tables
Yes.
with all sorts of drawers. This is amazing also for the size.
So,
This cannot be separated. This one, the
Oh.
issue, can be separated as we see it. This one cannot be separated. It's just one entire piece.
this tanzu that holds tea, which is cha, so it's cha tanzu, it's one whole piece. It's very heavy. I know it because I was moving it today, but I didn't know that it was a cha tanzu
Yes.
until Mr. Pino has enlightened me, because I placed Master Yun's painting. I saw the opening. I said, okay, I think it's a good way to place the feng shui art over here, and that's all we have, the feng shui calligraphy on
Yes.
this antique cha tanzu. Shall I bring it down to let everyone take a look? We're going to come back to this painting later, but this is how our cha tanzu looks like, the whole thing. Am I right? Is this-
Amazing. Really a very beautiful, distinct tansu. And this, again, it's Meiji period. So
Oh, this
it's
is
it's a matching period. But look how different they are. Now, this comes from a very, very, very wealthy and well-to-do family. Few people could have had something like this. And contrary to the Isshu Tansu, which was placed actually in a warehouse, or it was placed in a storage room for the clothing, this was in an important room and for the preparation of the tea, and mostly it's to impress visitors.
I see. So this, because it's a huge piece,
Yes,
and it's not a movable piece like this.
it's not.
And it's used to hold all things tea related, our guests, from like all the tea making
Utensils.
Probably the various teapots, probably the different tea leaves. Maybe I'm thinking, yeah.
Yes.
So, and if you can enjoy tea to that extent, for sure, I think you are of a super wealthy family, number one. And second, as Mr. Pino was explaining, it was in a place, probably they have a room that is for tea making room,
Yes,
or this is a guest room,
guest room.
and then I will show this off, and probably in front of us is the tea table, and the guests will be sitting there.
Absolutely, yes.
And I will take out my equipment and my essentials from this to make tea.
Yes.
So this is an extravagant and cultured show-off piece.
Not only. There's something else that needs to be added.
Okay.
When we talk about antiques, there's always something that it has been added or something which is missing.
Right.
Let me tell you, I have examined very carefully this tall cha tansu. Nothing has ever been replaced.
Ah.
Nothing. It's as it was made, brought into the wealthy house, and then for reason that I don't know, at one point in time, it entered the market and it was then acquired. So beautiful in everything. You know, it has everything original. There's not one piece which has been replaced.
I see.
Let's talk about the two essential woods that make up this chest. First of all, we talk about primary wood, and that's the tansu ya, the maker of this tansu,
Right.
would basically choose the best possible wood available. So it's called primary wood.
Okay.
And this would be cypress wood, this one here that we see here.
The structure.
The structure, what is visible. What is visible has the best wood exposed.
I see.
Second, there would be Suji wood, which is a different kind of wood, and is cedar wood. So we would have two different kind of wood, cypress and cedar, Japanese. So beautiful in every sense, quality of the material, primary. It has different sections. I would like to start by just highlighting the top section where we see two sliding doors. Interestingly enough, actually to push one side.
May I?
Here. Yes, please do that.
Ooh.
You would do it through those little
Oh.
circles. That's the way.
I see.
Which is they are metals and they contain beautiful little ornaments. Very, very special. Even the inside, when we look, the patina is really telling us about the age of this piece. The larger part would be, an open part would be this one here that we see.
This open area.
This open area. And it has two shelves. But when we examine the shelves, they're different.
Right.
One of the shelves has a border,
Here.
yes, frame. The other one does not. So when I was thinking about it, how come one has it and the other does not? Is that being perhaps replaced? No, there's no replacement, no replacement. The reason is that if we can imagine where, and in particular, we would have, what here we have is the Arita porcelain cups for the tea would be placed. And not to allow the cups to move, the first shelf would be used.
I see. So probably the more delicate ones,
Correct, would be there.
porcelain and maybe clay stuff, it will be
Absolutely.
breakable stuff,
Yes.
would be on the top.
On the top. And again, you just imagine that the color that the ware would have, very vivid color, beautiful color, how much this would just highlight and enhance the beauty of this compartment here, which is the only one open.
Yes.
So the focus was of the people, of the host, to make sure that the guest would immediately recognize the value of the ware.
So this is the place where they will show off the prized wares, and probably in those eras, in Meiji era, they were like, oh,
Yes.
sugoi desu ne. Oh, yeah, they can appreciate what's going on. Because what is inside here are probably other equipments that you can't see,
Yes.
and tea leaves and so on. But here it has to be the colorful, the glare, because this is Meiji era.
This is Meiji.
This is Meiji era.
This is Meiji era.
It might have been something similar or maybe something smaller that went up there.
Yes.
And the glaze of the whole thing, the reflection
Yes.
would have charmed the guest.
Absolutely.
A lot.
The small saucers, and then the cups,
Yeah.
and then whatever is part and parcel
Right.
of even the tea ceremony.
Right.
Now, we look here and we look
Oh,
at three beautiful drawers.
Yes.
The drawers basically are the same. Look at the ironwork. Each of this handle is basically slightly different, only because these are handmade.
Right.
Now we see on the top this sort of hinges which go from the front to the back.
Yes.
And that is for the solidity of the drawer,
Right.
to make sure that the two pieces would not open up. I can see from the side that there are nails. The nails are made out of bamboos. And these would be, actually, let me see, I saw them. Okay, this would be the nails. And this is the hinge that goes from the top to the side, and it will hold together the entire. Here again we see the nails, bamboo nails. Bamboo nails. Look at the patina, look at the color. I mean, these handles have never been replaced, as you can see, about the way that they have been attached to the wood.
These three small drawers,
yes,
not for showing off because it's hidden, what might they be used to keep?
Can I tell you, there would be paraphernalia regarding the tea ceremony, maybe something with regard to where the pot would possibly be placed.
Yes.
What I did forget mentioning, what would this place hold? In my opinion, this would hold the
teapot.
Absolutely right, the teapots in various type. The best one and the most artistic one, beside the silver one, which would be extremely precious, the most beautiful, which we can still find in the market, but the prices are absolutely very, very high.
Cast iron.
It's the cast iron, because the Japanese say that the best tea comes from boiling the water in the cast iron pots.
That I heard of, yeah.
And most of those pieces would have the seal either of the foundry or even of the artist.
Right.
So imagine there would possibly be 2 or 3 of those pots, and in the process it would be just used one, and the other would be a beautiful display.
Yeah, because cast iron, there's a certain weight to it, huh?
Yes.
So probably placing here would be the best option.
The best. In this, over on the shelves, in my opinion, there would be this fantastic Rita porcelain, again with plenty of decoration, plenty of colors, very vivid colors. Now, the next drawer that we see is just one drawer. In this case, it contains a locking mechanism.
There's a lock.
So this is to prevent that the people serving in the house would have access to the contents of the drawers. Yes, because it would possibly be silver. It would be silver of, I mean, the dishes underneath, underneath the cups sometimes are beautiful silver dishes.
I see.
So they would be locked. Again, we see the hinges, which would go from the front with the same technique and would go to the back, very similar. If we see these handles, these ones are slightly bigger than this.
Right, hand forged,
Yes, and hand forged, all hand forged.
And we have this little thing here.
Yes, which again is sliding doors. The opening is through this.
Oh, okay.
Now, it's so complex. They could have actually made some circle like this for this door. Instead, they decided to make something totally rectangular, geometrical. The 2 doors closes by virtue of a mechanism, which they have to be perfectly...
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Also, it's like a lock.
It's just like a lock, which would have this key, unfortunately, missing.
Right.
But look how beautiful all of this.
And with this, it's locked.
This is locked. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So probably containing the option to contain something.
Again, precious items which nobody wants to allow anybody to basically have easy access to. Yes. Yes. Once the guest had left, I'm sure if they had silver teapots, they would go.
That's the size.
Yes.
Yeah, because this is too narrow to
not
short.
possible. Not possible.
So this is the one.
This would be the one.
I
Correct.
see. Okay.
Correct. Again,
wow. So it's like a treasure chest.
I think it's a beautiful collector's item, as I mentioned, in beautiful condition. We have another drawer here, and the drawer would be similar to the one above. Okay, one thing that should be mentioned is that we have a little nail head. Again, the nail head would serve to make sure that when the handle sits, it does not at all dent the wood. So everything has been taught by the Tansuya very, very carefully. And this was meant to live hundreds of years. So they had the idea of how to make sure that these pieces would have solidity, would have all the details, not to have any dents, scratches, or whatever. And I don't see any scratch on this one.
A rich family, a well-to-do family, has commissioned a tanziya, the house of making tanzis,
Yes.
something to make something like this. Probably they went there and said that I would like to make a tea cabinet that I would like to put in the main hall, or probably the VIP room that they
The VIP room.
yeah.
Yes.
Then because such delicate details are taken care of, so it's definitely a commissioned piece by the wealthy family to one of the master craftsmen of that era. Am I guessing correctly?
And that would be, in this chest, would be a very expensive one for all the details, for all the elements that have been selected. Amazing.
Right.
Like to just highlight this opening here.
Yeah, this is interesting because it has a
Very
lot
interesting.
more details.
Lot more
It's a bit
details.
more on the bottom, so if you cannot see, you have to, why? Oh, this thing. Can you put the,
Yes.
yeah. Ta-da. Yeah.
That are really
It's very
heavy.
heavy actually, yeah. So this thing has much more details than the rest of the cabinets, am I
Yes.
right?
Yes.
In fact, it's a sort of like a cross thing to be extremely fortified.
45.
The most
And-
peculiar thing.
Yes.
There's three of this.
First of all, these ones that we see here, these are the hinges to allow the door to open.
Yeah.
These one here. And what I find particularly interesting is whilst
Oh,
all of these are horizontals, this is vertical. They could have made one exactly the same.
you could have opened it like that as well,
Yes.
but why? Yeah.
It's again about variety.
Ah.
It's again about details. It's again about not making this chest an obvious piece,
Yeah.
but an extremely elegant piece. Everything seems to be different. Then let's look at this small drawers. I would say fat drawers. They're very similar to the ones above, although there's a difference in
Height,
size. In size.
Yeah.
Yes. And finally, we have two drawers at the bottom, very similar to the upper ones, but each one has a
lock.
locking mechanism.
It's
Again,
so-
things that would fit in these drawers would be placed in the drawers, would be precious items.
I see. Ah, wow. So this chest used to hold some of the most precious tea materials. Coincidentally, because I saw an opening, so I was placing Master Yun's calligraphy
Yes.
in it. And somehow, you know what? The one behind you, it's
Yes.
a bit too big. The one behind me is a bit too long.
But
I
this
found that
fits-
this size was the one that fit perfectly. Look at this. I didn't do anything else to it. It fits perfectly there.
It's
and-
about things being precious.
Yeah.
And look at the way they amalgamate together. And art, as long as it has space, it really is, of any era, of any period, it would have its own value and basically communicate. Art is the language that artists speak, and it's only one language.
Right. Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers.
Can I top up some laurent-perrier for you? All right.
Thank you.
Cheers. So here, as we are looking at the Meiji Tanzi, two of them. This for clothing, this for cha Tanzi. We have decided to place this of Master Yun's painting and calligraphy on it. You'll be familiar. This is one of Master Yun's calligraphy. We talked about it the last two times that China influenced Japan culturally, artistically, and Japan has done its own evolution, and they are one of the main forerunners of modern calligraphy.
Yes.
So what Master Yun is doing is also a way of modern calligraphy,
Yes.
which we talked about that received a lot of recognition from even the imperial Japan family. right here that is called 日月同光, shining as bright as the day or the sun and the moon. And I suppose that when we talked about ikebana, which is like a Tao, when you're in the path, tea making in Chinese or even in Japanese, they call it cha Tao. Cha means tea. That means that it's not just an art, it's a Tao. That the person making tea, they have to get into the zone of it. So all this, there's a Tao to it. Tao. And when Master paints, that's also, it's not just how good that you can paint. Some people, when they see Master painting, going like, let's say if the one behind you is 268,000. This has been on the Great Wall of China, many layers. This few couple of pieces behind, this is actually just 53,000. Some people will say that, oh, you know, I also can paint something like that. But maybe a lot of times they underestimate the workmanship involved, number one. And if you have not painted as much as Master Yun and you have not experienced as much as Master Yun, then probably you are not going to be in the zone. You won't be in the Tao. So what Master Yun is painting, like what we are talking about today, the ikebana, which is Hua Tao, the Tanzi for the tea, which is Cha Tao, and what Master Yun is painting is also in another form of Tao, another form of the way. We are really combining these three things together. So I think I've decided I'm not going to move this back to the main gallery. I'm going to put this just here.
Yes.
So we can appreciate the different Taos together, conglomerated. With the paintings behind you and the painting
it's
behind
a beautiful
me as well.
setting tonight.
It's a beautiful
really, really special.
Yeah.
Really special.
I think so too, yeah. A lot of moving around nonetheless. Heavy lifting, this whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah, it can be separated, so it was much easier. But this is something else, really. And a little bit of advertisement per se here, that fengshui calligraphy, which is just this one that's behind me, this is at FSC 200. We are closing to the end of the year, Mr. Pino, am I right?
Right.
And it's going to be 2022 soon. So fast.
Few more days.
So fast. How many more days? Today is
the 28th.
Today is the 28th.
So in 3 days' time, basically would be
29th, 30th, 31st.
31st.
So
3 more days.
3 days and just a few more hours.
Yes.
We're going to be in 2022. And friends would know in 2022 a lot of things. By the time we hit 2022, a lot of things are going to happen. Number one, Master Yun's fengshui calligraphy would go back to its original price.
Yes.
Which is double the price actually.
Right.
So now, for instance, this piece which I'm putting on this treasure chest, because every single compartment really gives you something to look out for.
Yes.
It's at 53,000. After that, it will be like 106, 108,000. And if for every 10K that you spend now and you purchase fully redeemed, you will get not the champagne that we're drinking, but this very limited edition called Blanc de Blanc. And worthy of mention, only 2 places in Asia have. One is Lotus on Water, not Singapore, but us, Lotus on Water, and the second place is Japan. Do you know about this?
You mentioned it, and I was extremely surprised. Is it possible that in Asia, with the exception of Japan, Lotus on Water is the only one other place where actually you can find
that you can physically have this Blanc de Blanc champagne. So you can't find it anywhere else. You can only find it here in our gallery, in this museum in Lotus, and Japan. And so strangely, so coincidentally, we're talking about all things Japan. You can order online, but I'll tell you, number one is not cheap. Second, I saw it online today.
Yes.
It said if you order before a certain date, you will get it by the end of January, that kind.
Oh.
And it's not confirmed because they have to shift a lot of resources around the whole world. So you have a good chance to own this now. And since it's the new year, why not and might as well have yourself a jolly Christmas. Oh, Christmas is over. A jolly good New Year and prepare for the next Chinese New Year.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pino. I think
it's my absolute pleasure. Tonight it was an amazing collection, beautiful paintings, art pieces. If anybody ever were to say that they can do something like this, I would challenge them and said, okay, try. People think that they are artists. The problem is that an artist is born, has developed the skills, and the skills are not developed overnight.
Yes, and once they're there, like the Tanziyas, like Master Yun, I think they have reached the zone, or they have been one with the Tao. Cheers.
Thank you so much.
See you next week. We are going to go to another country, and you will know it when you watch us next week.